Allow me to say good evening and to associate myself with the list of distinguished guests that was read by the Vice-Chancellor. I think he did it perfectly. It doesn't bear repetition. The only thing I will do is I do note Mrs. Farida Omar is here. Could I welcome her on all our behalf? It's a great, great honor to have you here now. Now I'm going to have an interesting time here because I can hardly see anything. And, you know, I definitely don't wear glasses in public. So we'll see how we do. I wanted to begin by saying many years ago, in that period when I was Minister of Education, thank you. My son showed me how to do this, I forgot. I said to a seminar that was hosted by HISA in Pretoria on higher education development and particularly the development of the humanities. As I listened to everyone moaning about how we're not giving attention to the humanities, lack of support, this, that, and the other, I indicated that actually the reputational problems the humanities were experiencing were because of academics and not politicians, and thus restoring the status of the humanities will depend on academics and not on politicians. And I think what Professor Lalu has done is respond to that call, because he has restored the character of the humanities and put the humanities back where they should always have been. I do not believe that there should be a competition between the humanities and the sciences, engineering, and technology. I believe we must excel in all disciplines and fields, and that once we begin to view one or the other as a competition, we are diminishing the possibility of the intellectual resources that can be available to our society and the opportunities that we should make available to the diverse range of talents that young people have in any community. So all disciplines matter. However, I will insist that science, engineering, and technology are important, particularly for the African continent, because if we neglect them at our peril. So when we emphasize them, it's not as a competition against the social sciences or the humanities, but rather to ensure that we take our place in the global community and do not create an impression that one discipline is our domain and another one is not available for us. All intellectual action and discourse matter. And that's the argument I will always bring to every stage. Now let me go to my input this evening. That was just my spiel. Well, I believe that the University of Western Cape has confidently evolved from a teaching institution into an institution with very sophisticated research activities and accomplishments. The types of research performed at UWC have vastly expanded and improved over the past 10 years, due to no small degree to the efforts of Professor O'Connell, his deans, but especially to Renfrew Christie. Never undermine the role of a DVC research. Very, very important. The university, I believe, can be proud of the fact that it produces the largest number of Black and female postgraduate science students in the country. Today, UWC is one of only 3 places in Africa undertaking comprehensive research in hydrogen and fuel cell development. And today, UWC is a leader in biotechnology, especially genetics of life forms that strive in extreme conditions, and their implications for our understanding of microbial molecular ecology. All of this at this very University of the Left. Today, we celebrate as we launch a new institutional form established by the NRF to provide support to universities, a flagship. Now, before I proceed, I want to say to Dr. Ganson Pillay that if a powerful Black man comes to me and says I should start something, and he says there's no money for it, I'll be very suspicious, and I will not do it. So I think, Professor Lalu, you should tell Mr. Pillay he better find the money for you to be able to do what must be done at this flagship. Flagships are aimed at responding to a gap within the current framework of higher education support and research promotion in South Africa. We have established universities with a strong institutional research base, and they receive support both from existing research support instruments that we have in the department and the NRF, as well as from a range of friends in a range of spaces. Universities that are developing their research capabilities have only begun recently to receive attention from public funding. The flagship program aims to provide customized, innovative solutions and institutional support in a way that recognizes the unique strengths and research niche areas of public universities. The flagship program seeks to recognize potential for growth into centers of excellence in selected niche areas of research and teaching. Now, one of the reasons that Prof. Ramesh and others are able to be so kind to me is not because of me. It's because of the wonderful officials that I work with, both in the entities that report to the department as well as in my own department. Were it not for people like Thomas of de Heide, Beverly Damonse, Ganson Pillay, and many others, we would not be here today. So ministers who seem to do something good, it's because of the officials that they work with, not because of them. Now, one of the things that officials do for ministers is they provide you with something called briefing notes, which tell you what everything is about. And these notes are very obscure documents. So when I was reading the particular briefing note on this flagship, I kept saying, what are they talking about? And so I decided I will interpret it the way I understand it. And the paragraph I've just read now is my interpretation. So essentially what I'm saying, and I hope they're listening carefully, is that the flagships will not remain flagships. They will grow into centers of excellence. Now, you may wonder why I say this. I've drawn this distinction between universities that already have a very established, well-entrenched institutional base for carrying out research at the most highest levels of quality and excellence, and then emerging institutions that are growing into such capacity. If we don't provide support that gives life to centers of excellence, we'll always be aspiring. We will never get there. And it will result in a problem that worries me, which is that as we produce more and more talented young people with senior level qualifications, we will come to realize that the architecture for performing research and development is far too small. So our initiatives must seek to grow the architecture. And that's why I give this interpretation of those notes. So as you've been told, the critical thought in African Humanities Flagship is the first flagship that will be supported by the NRF. Now, I have to confess that I am a little concerned by the concept African humanities. I don't quite understand what it means, and we may need to have a discussion about it, because I think when we choose concepts and particularly titles for institutions, we should ensure that we don't lock ourselves into something that diminishes the scope of what one would like to do. So I still find myself a little puzzled. I think I understand, but I'm not sure, and so I do think we need to have a conversation. But as I'm told, its intention is to promote critical thought in the humanities in Africa, and that's how I've interpreted African humanities. You see, putting it before humanities causes a problem, but critical thought in the humanities in Africa answers my concern. You should have labeled it a different way, but anyway. If the flagship lives up to the expectations set out in its founding documents, I believe it will radically alter the focus and thrust of the humanities in South Africa and on the African continent. The proposed promotion of critical thought in African humanities or humanities in Africa offers a promising new opportunity to renew and reaffirm the humanities. Our country and many countries on the African continent, and I dare say the entire world, are grappling with the difficult challenges of 21st century transformation. The difficult challenges of promoting equality and developing laws suited to a global community. Governments and communities find themselves faced by new socio-political demands and concerns. It is the humanities that can and should provide the interdisciplinary focus that will support the search for new approaches and unique, responsive policy frameworks. It is the humanities that would assist communities to develop means of working together as Africans from different parts of Africa. It is the humanities that will help the West to understand that religious freedom can never be a threat to a society, that its acknowledgement and embracing will actually introduce democracy and security. So I believe South African research on identity and transformation already has rich material to form the foundation for the early work of this flagship. The flagship offers collaborative opportunities to scientists in a range of fields, opportunities that are not sufficiently explored, that are not sufficiently collaborative in nature. Opportunities to look at a diverse range of fields with new eyes and new definitions. How do we look, for example, at customary law in the context of democracy, something Z.K. Matthews wrote about? How do we look at history and culture? How do we look at human origin and the human dignity of the African? How do we look at issues of race and identity without introducing patriarchy or chauvinism? And many, many other issues that still require responses in our various societies. Professor Feast, who received a lifetime honor from the NRF just last week, referred to these interdisciplinary possibilities in his NRF Lifetime Achiever Award speech last week. And I was intrigued that an astronomer spoke of interdisciplinarity. And I think the humanities must start talking about the sciences as well. Ethics and nanotechnology, philosophy and education, archaeology and clinical sciences, and many other transdisciplinary studies will surely be the focus of this and other flagship initiatives. I believe all of that we are celebrating today has taken intense creativity and path-breaking imagination to bring into play. We should invest more in imagination in South Africa. I think that imagination should be more valued and nurtured at universities than it is at this moment. Our public education system tends to suggest that there is a ranking that places maths, science, and languages at the top of the curriculum and places the arts, music, and dance at the bottom. In doing so, we place imagination at the bottom. Albert Einstein once said, and I quote, "Imagination is more powerful than knowledge." I think what he meant is that the ability to imagine a world that does not exist is more powerful than the knowledge we have to understand the world that does. The ability to imagine and to think critically is vitally important. I'm pleased that it is the humanities that are going to lead this flagship and this development of creativity and the imagination at the University of the Western Cape. I believe the flagship program has the potential to strengthen regional and institutional partnerships. I hope that the Humanities in Africa flagship will play a role in shaping teaching and learning in all faculties at this university and other universities. One of the things that does worry me is that we are not developing a wide range of skills among graduates in our institutions. They don't write very well. They don't play music. They don't have a sense of history. How do you produce a scientist who has no sense of philosophy or ethics or history? So I think we'd like to see the humanities come out of its shy hole and begin to say to all faculties, what we have actually matters. The intellectual rigor we bring, the analytical skills we introduce, the poetry, which is a science, bring something that all graduates should have. I still recall being a student in Botswana at their very new university at the time, and being keen to study science, but compelled to do African literature. And today I absolutely thank the university for that, because had I not had that introduction, I'd never have understood the writings of Africa. I wouldn't have studied African studies. I wouldn't have learned a bit of maths, which they insisted every student should do, so that all of us emerged numerate, but cultured as well. So I'd like the Humanities Center for Humanities Research and this flagship to really look at how we can begin a conversation within the university to re-look at how we imagine the curriculum, to re-look at how we imagine a graduate, to re-look at the kinds of skills young people have begun, I think, to thirst for. Young people who should have a very different posture from the posture some of our graduates have. You know, when you see a university student being racist or celebrating Hitler, you really wonder, what are our universities teaching? How is it possible in a university that the greatest breach of human rights takes place? It means there is something wrong in the academy. There's something wrong in our curriculum. There's something wrong in our lack of recognition of the place of human rights in our society. So don't be a flagship, a center located in a space. Have ambition to influence the academy in its entirety and to change its intellectual practice and culture. I think that we are really grateful to the role that has been played by the Department of Higher Education and Training in engendering a national debate on the future of the humanities in South Africa, and for developing the Charter for Humanities and the Social Sciences. Grateful as well to the precursor to this, which was the consensus study of the Academy of Sciences of South Africa, which also reported on the humanities and social sciences and what we need to do in order to respond to their needs. Both these important processes emphasize the need for critical engagement and thought involving scholars and public society in contemporary South Africa. Since the inception in 2006 of the UWC Center for Humanities Research, we've seen the emergence of a meeting point for researchers in the humanities and social sciences throughout Southern Africa. Now, as this flagship on critical thought, this center will be able to do much more. As a flagship, it will be able to host scholars and students from universities in Southern Africa, scholars from public institutions, scholars from international research institutes. It will be able to forge them together in a new endeavor to strengthen the humanities and their role in society and in the global community. As Professor Laulu indicated, the center has a strong commitment to the demands that are mandated by our agreement that we should build a new intellectual culture in democratic South Africa. And that intellectual culture doesn't mean, because you have the word critical, it's anti-ANC. That's not intellectual. That's actually subjective use of intellectual opportunity. Objective use means full analysis of everyone, of every party, of every institution, of society in its entirety. The limitation of critique in South Africa to one component is, to me, a sad reflection on our intellectual abilities. We are very pleased at the role the NRF is playing in ensuring that we strengthen scholarly support and research promotion in South Africa. As you know, through the NRF, we run two important programs which have been mentioned this evening, the Centers of Excellence and the South African Research Chairs, whose intent is to broaden our research capacity. Now, the NRF has introduced a third key program. The Flagship program is a transformative and equity intervention that focuses on excellent research and innovation capacity, targeted primarily at previously disadvantaged institutions and rural-based institutions, and using such institutions' comparative advantages. Most importantly, the Flagship program could become, as I've said, a stepping stone to hosting centers of excellence and research professorships under the South African Research Chairs program. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be at this launch, to witness the further maturing of the University of the Western Cape, and to be able to share that a University of the South, created in the South, for very, very evil means, can become a really fantastic cause for good. So I congratulate the University of the Western Cape, and I wish this flagship well, and I conclude by saying, don't be shy about following up the money. Thank you.